All right, let's dive right into a topic that's often misunderstood, but is built on this really profound idea of fairness: Islamic finance. I wanted to start with this because, let's be honest, it probably flies in the face of everything you've ever heard. The idea that Islamic finance is all about limiting wealth, it's one of the biggest myths out there. In fact, the principles are designed to create more fair wealth, not less. Okay, so if that's true, where does all the confusion come from? Why do so many people, both Muslims and non-Muslims, think these rules are designed to hold you back financially? Well, the answer really boils down to a misunderstanding of one single core concept. And that one concept is riba. But understanding riba isn't just about learning a rule. It's about getting your head around a totally different philosophy of money. So, put simply, riba is any kind of predetermined, guaranteed profit you make just for lending out money. Imagine I lend you $1,000 and I say, hey, you've got to pay me back $1,100, and I don't care what happens with your business. See? I've taken zero risk, but I'm guaranteed to make money. That's riba. And right here, you can see these two fundamentally different worlds. A conventional loan, that system is pretty much built for the lender to almost always win, right? It pushes all the risk onto the borrower. And this is how people, even whole societies, get trapped in debt. Islamic finance just flips that script. It says, nope, profit has to be tied to sharing the risk and actually creating some real value. And riba isn't the only piece of the puzzle. But here's the thing. Instead of seeing these other rules as, restrictions, you should really think of them more like protective guardrails. They're there to keep the whole system fair and transparent for everyone involved. Let's take the principle of gharar. This one's all about getting rid of excessive uncertainty or vagueness. It basically bans deals that are so unclear they could easily be used to rip someone off. Clarity and transparency are non-negotiable to protect both sides from a blind gamble. Another one of these guardrails is against macer, which is basically gambling. This forbids those zero-sum games where wealth isn't actually created, it's just moved from a loser to a winner. That's a world away from a real business investment, where two people team up, share the risk, and actually hope to create new wealth that they can both benefit from. So this is the key takeaway, right here. Islamic finance is not risk-averse. Not at all. It's actually built on the idea of taking risks. But, and this is a big but, the risk has to be shared. Your profit is supposed to be the reward for taking a real, shared business risk, not for trapping someone with a loan where you have no skin in the game. Okay, so that's the theory. But how does this all work in our day-to-day lives? Let's bring it down to earth and see how these principles play out with things like salaries, rent, and the big one everyone asks about: car loans. Yeah, this is a super common question. People ask, hey, aren't salaries and rent just a fixed return? Isn't that kind of like riba? And the answer is a clear no. Why? Because in all of these cases, you're getting paid for delivering real, actual value. You're not getting paid just for lending out money. You're being paid for your time, your hard work, for letting someone use a physical property, or for a product you're selling. It's a fair exchange of value for cash. This might be the most common criticism you hear about Islamic banking. On the surface, yeah, a murabaha financing deal for a car can look a whole lot like a regular loan. You still end up paying more than the sticker price over time. But the mechanics happening underneath are completely different. Okay, here's the huge difference. With a conventional loan, the bank just gives you money. Their profit is from, renting you that money. But in a murabaha deal, the bank first goes out and buys the car. They actually become the legal owner, which means they're taking on all the risks that come with owning that asset. Then, and only then, do they sell that car to you at a markup that you've both agreed on. So their profit comes from a legitimate sale of an asset they owned, not from a simple loan. So you might be wondering, how do these principles, which are centuries old, hold up in this crazy, fast-paced world of stocks, crypto, and digital assets? The answer is, surprisingly well. The core logic doesn't change one bit. It really doesn't matter how complicated the financial product seems. You just have to boil it down to two simple questions. First, is the underlying business or asset permissible or halal? And second, is the profit you're making coming from a shared risk investment, or is it from some kind of transaction that breaks those rules of fairness we just talked about? And you can see this distinction really clearly when you look at different trading styles. A lot of day trading or options trading, you're often just speculating on price movements without ever really owning the asset. It's kind of like betting on the price of a stock instead of actually buying a piece of the company. That can easily fall into that forbidden category of gambling or excessive uncertainty. But something like swing trading, where you actually buy and hold an asset, fully accepting the risk of owning it, well, that's seen as a legitimate shared risk investment. And this is such a powerful idea, isn't it? The ethics of a deal aren't about how fast you make the profit. You could be a long-term investor holding for a decade or a short-term trader. The only thing that really matters is the nature of the transaction itself. Is it fair? Do you actually own what you're selling? Is the risk being shared? So when you start to piece all of this together, you realize it's not just a dusty old set of rules. It's a whole different way of thinking about money, about wealth, and honestly, about our relationship with each other. That's really what it is. It's an economic system that tries to bake fairness and shared prosperity right into its DNA. It makes sure that finance stays a tool to serve us, not a machine that profits from our debt. And that brings us right back to where we started. These rules aren't chains trying to hold you back from success. They're a shield. They're protecting you from exploiting other people, and they're protecting you from being exploited yourself. The message is actually really clear. Ambition is great, building wealth is great, but it has to be done in a way that lifts people up instead of trapping them. So, if you only take one thing away from this explainer today, let it be this rule. It's a super clear, actionable guide. It's not about avoiding wealth at all. It's about going after it ethically. It's about making sure that on your journey to success, money stays your servant and never ever becomes your master.